So much for joining us tonight. This is a big deal. It's our first ever Wausau strategic plan. The goal here of these public input sessions is to understand what our community's priorities are, so we can figure out how we accomplish them through both policy and operations. When I was reading some of the other strategic plans to kind of get inspiration, I came across this quote from President Abraham Lincoln, and he said, "Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I will spend the first 4 sharpening that axe." And that's what we're doing here tonight. We're sharpening the axe. So when it comes down to crafting the right policy or working on the right programs and getting the work done for you, the important work of having the right plan of attack is already there guiding us. So thank you for being a part of this. I can't wait to see how this helps us move our community forward. I also want to give a shout out to some of our strategic plan steering committee members who are here tonight. You'll see them, you'll talk to them. Jean, who has been amazing at setting all this up, and obviously Barry Dunn, who is our consultant who's helping us get this done. So thank you very much. I'm going to flip it over to you, Michelle, and I'm going to sneak off, but if you need me, Jean knows how to find me.
Thanks, Mayor Katie. Hello, everyone. Happy to be able to join you virtually. I'm Michelle Kennedy. I'm the project manager on our team, Barry Dunn, for your strategic planning effort in partnership with the city. And just a little bit about our firm. We are a nationwide consulting firm that works extensively with local governments. We provide all types of consulting services to local governments, including strategic planning. I have been consulting with local governments for 25 years now and doing strategic planning that entire time. So doing this work for communities like yours in the Midwest and in all the other regions of the country. So we are bringing some insights that we gain as we work with other communities, as well as just a long history of really working closely with local governments. Prior to becoming a consultant, I was a senior policy person in state government for the state of Oregon. So I've kind of lived and breathed government work for wow, getting close to 35 years. I'm originally from the Midwest. I was born and raised in Iowa. I went to school at Iowa State University. I vacationed with my family a lot in Wisconsin. I still have friends that live there. And I think of myself as a Midwesterner I'll always think of myself that way, even though I've lived in Oregon for the past 31 years. So it's nice to be working with a community that's close to home. So with that, I will go ahead and share my screen. We have some information to present to you, and then we're going to have discussion with everybody there about the future, your desired future for Wausau. So give me a moment while I pull up the slide presentation and we will get going here.
And if you have questions along the way, you can certainly interject at any time and I'll just bring you the mic. So I'll just try and pay attention.
Please do. Can everybody see the slide presentation?
Yes.
Great. It's visible up on the screen. All right. Well, let's get going. So we're going to start tonight with a discussion question just to kind of get everybody engaged. And then we're going to present a profile of your community that we have been putting together over the last few weeks. I think because we're such a small group, we won't do breakout discussions. Typically we do small group discussions, but I think we'll stay in one large group. And then we'll do another kind of poll question at the end to kind of gauge your sense of optimism about the future of your community. And then I believe Mayor Katie will be back briefly for next steps, and then we'll close it off. So with that, just some quick guidelines for participation. I think we probably don't need to talk much about 1 and 7 because we won't be breaking you into small group discussions, but these are probably pretty obvious, but just respect each other's viewpoints. We all come from different walks of life, different experiences. So being, listening intently and respectfully to everyone else when they're speaking. Let's try to stay focused on the discussion at hand. So our point of this evening is to talk about Wausau's future. We're going to talk a little bit about the present in the presentation that I'm going to be sharing with you, but it's going to be focused on understanding the present situation so we know how to plan for the future. If you want to stop, just either raise your hand in the room and the city staff will let me know if I can't see you that somebody has a question. And then as Jean said, please ask questions as we go. Happy to stop the presentation to answer things that come up in the moment. All right. So let's start with the first discussion question. Which words best describe your community? So when you're thinking of your community, and maybe you're talking about your community to people who don't live here, family members that live in other towns or other states, or friends that you stay in touch with that don't live in your community, how do you describe the place that you live?
Hi, I would describe it as 4 seasons of outdoor activity.
Very good.
Anybody else?
How else would you describe your community?
I know the mayor describes it as home. Regardless of where she is, this is home.
Yeah, I don't know if I can really describe it, but I grew up in Green Bay, and Wausau reminds me of Green Bay when I was a kid. So
Okay.
I don't know if that's a good thing or bad, but Green Bay foreshadows a lot of things that we've done in the past and hopefully in the future.
Anybody else?
Any other words you would use to describe?
Yeah, I guess I have a phrase. I've heard for Wausau, it's a small town community with big city amenities, and I think that's a very good description.
Well, we're excited to come there. We'll be there in January to work with the Strategic Planning Steering Committee to start developing the plan. I've been to many places in Wisconsin, but I have not been to Wausau, so that's going to be great. All right, well, let's continue on, and we're going to walk you through a little bit about the strategic planning process, and then we'll get into the community profile. So we are in the stakeholder engagement phase, phase 2. We had spent some really good time with the city team, really figuring out how we wanted to structure this project and what we wanted our approach to be so that we can come up with a plan that's going to be a really great end product for the city, and that it can actually take action on this plan and implement it. So we spent some time upfront planning. We thought very deeply about how we wanted to do community engagement and stakeholder engagement. And during that project initiation phase, we actually hired onto our team, the Very Done team, as a subcontractor, a consultant and member of the Hmong community to really do some pretty deep outreach into that part of Wausau's community makeup. And her name is Yang Yi Lor, and she did some pretty extensive work in the Hmong community to get their input. So we've had the benefit of that, and we're really pleased with that result. So in the stakeholder engagement phase, these community forums that we've been having are part of that, as well as a number of other methods that we're using, and I'll talk about that in the next slide. And then by the end of this calendar year, we'll have pretty much wrapped up the stakeholder and community engagement, and then we'll be ready to go into the actual development of the plan. And the mayor and the city team has put together a steering committee that is going to be leading that development of the plan. And then it will ultimately go out for public comment, and also then finally to the city council for review and final adoption. So that's kind of our process, and it'll probably be around March or so, early to mid-March, when we're getting that plan in front of the city council. So that's kind of our timeline. What we're going to be presenting to you this evening is called an environmental scan, and that's a fancy word for just a picture of the current environment in which the city finds itself, the current sort of operating environment for city government, the current environment in which the community is experiencing. And so we bring in a lot of different data and different data points into this environmental scan. And the point of it is to look for opportunities and challenges and trends that will drive what we want to focus on in the strategic plan and what we can be effective at doing. Then we want to be able to provide everyone that's involved in the strategic planning process with this shared understanding of the current environment. So we're all kind of operating off of the same page when we actually go to develop the plan. And then it helps city leaders in sort of navigating the forces that are out there. If you understand the environment in which you're working, and then you can develop strategies to address that environment, that helps you achieve a shared vision for the community. So that's the point of it. So in terms of the approach to our environmental scan, and as I mentioned, we are in the stakeholder and community engagement phase right now. We're trying to get to all these different groups through a variety of mechanisms, but we're doing group and one-on-one interviews with businesses, seniors and youth, elected officials, members of the Black, Indigenous population, and other ethnic and cultural community members. As I mentioned, we've already done kind of a deep dive into the Hmong community. We're trying to get perspectives from community-based organizations that serve a lot of different parts of Wausau's population, including nonprofits and places of worship, and then advocates and service clubs, and anybody we can touch base with who's going to have a view into different needs in the community and different people that live in the community. So we're going to be conducting interviews with more than 50 stakeholders. We have put up a community engagement platform that you can access from the city's homepage. So far, we've had close to 100 survey responses and 28 different comments. We're going to have that engagement platform up for a while longer, and we expect some more. And then we've been reviewing multiple documents and data that the city has provided us so that we can get more insight and understanding into the current environment. This is the landing page, what the landing page looks like for the social engagement platform. As I mentioned, if you go onto the City of Wausau's homepage, it's prominently there. It says strategic planning, and there's a link that you can click, and it takes you right here to a brief description. This is Wausau's first strategic plan. So we're trying to engage a lot of different people in the process so we can get a good, solid first plan that then you can build off of in years to come. Once you get on this page, as you scroll down, you'll see a link that you can click on for a video, and this is a personal message from Mayor Rosenberg that talks about the importance of this process and why the city is doing it and how we intend to use the plan going forward. Then these are the three main mechanisms that community members have to provide input. On the left-hand side, this is a share your ideas. So when you click on that, leave a comment, you have 6 categories that you can choose from to leave a comment about your community. And we'll show you some examples of those comments a little bit later in our presentation. You can also click on the survey link, and it's about a, 15, 17 question survey, mostly, multiple choice ranking kind of survey. It takes about 5 to 10 minutes to fill out. That touches on different aspects of life and the community. And then finally, this last one, if you click on it, Envision Our Future, you have 500 characters to type in your own personal narrative about what you would like Wausau to become in the future. So we encourage you to access that engagement site and share your ideas, both in the forum this evening, but if you have additional ideas you want to share it, that's a way to do it. All right, so now we're going to jump into the community profile portion of our environmental scan. I'm going to be presenting a lot of information, so again, stop me if you have questions or you want further clarification. So here's some interesting facts about Wausau. You might know some of these things, but we thought these were, as outsiders to your community, we thought these were kind of interesting and fun and compelling. I won't read them all to you, but we just really like that the whole focus on recreation and outdoor activity seems to be a really strong theme, and you'll see that as we move throughout this presentation, how important that is to community members and how much it's valued. So when we survey people in communities when we're doing strategic planning, we always ask them about their impressions of quality of life. And so as you can see from this slide, people generally feel pretty good about quality of life in their community. They think that Wausau is a pretty great community in terms of being a place to live, as well as a place to work. They don't rate it quite as highly as a place to raise children, but it's still pretty far up there. In terms of a place to retire, not as high. You can see there that it's a little bit more mixed in terms of the results, but definitely people think highly of their overall quality of life in Wausau. So here's some very specific quality of life factors that we asked people about. And so in terms of outdoor spaces, trails, parks, people feel pretty positively about that. That's in the dark blue. So you can see that most people agree or strongly agree with that. In the green there, it's easy for me to use Wausau's parks, trails, and outdoor spaces. So again, people generally feel pretty positive about that. Where it doesn't rank quite as high is the shopping and restaurants. This is one area where we have heard, and from this different stakeholder input that we're receiving, that people want more of that local shopping and restaurants that provide more variety. And then again, not quite as high, but generally pretty positive. People feel there are essential stores that they can access near them. Here's a few other quality of life factors. So in blue, in the dark blue, I feel safe where I live. Generally, again, the majority of respondents agreed with that. And if you add up the agree and strongly agree, it's a pretty large number of the total responses. In the lime green there, I trust the police to treat me and others like me fairly. Didn't rank as high there. Not quite as many respondents agreeing and strongly agreeing with that statement. In the light blue, I can find affordable housing in my area. This one scored even lower. You'll see the affordable housing theme come up through the entire presentation that I'm sharing with you. And then in the purple, I can access transportation to get to my job, shopping, and other community services. Again, this one didn't rank quite as high in terms of quality of life. And we have heard that in our individual interviews as well. In terms of quality of life, kind of open-ended, top answers from 57 respondents. These are some of the things that they like. Or that they want to see, that they feel could be improved. Access to education, it was a big one. Inclusivity was mentioned quite a bit. People want more childcare options, more locally owned businesses. They want to continue with the downtown revitalization that's been going on. More biking and walking trails. And again, that theme of affordable housing. So these are things that they want to see improved in terms of their quality of life. In terms of favorite aspects of Wausau, I mentioned this before, people really value the outdoors, the natural beauty, the trails, the parks, the recreation opportunities. You can see that was by far and away the highest ranked item in terms of favorite aspects of Wausau. And then next highest is the quality of police and fire services. And then there's three that kind of are right there together. The sense of community and belonging, commercial shopping and restaurants, and then quality of transportation all kind of came in around the same. So people's sense of whether or not Wausau is welcoming to members of diverse identities, backgrounds, and experiences, it is true that the majority of respondents did say yes, but there's quite a large number that said no. And so we did hear this in our interviews as well. It depends on who you are. Some people feel very comfortable and welcomed in the community, and others do not. So now we're going to present some data that we gathered. And this is, actually, this slide should have been changed. This is not the 2019 American Community Survey. This is the 2020 US Census data. We actually had access to this when we were putting our presentation together. And for purposes of just context, I'll be sharing some national statistics here and some Wisconsin statewide statistics so you can kind of see how Wausau stacks up with others like on the national scale and then within the state itself. As you can see there, the Wausau population is growing. It's not growing fast, but it is growing, and we expect that trend line to continue probably at the same pace that it has been over the last couple of decades. In terms of median household income, you are about, well, you are a little bit, you are actually quite a bit lower than where the average is for the state. It's 61,700 for the state, and it's about 62,800 for on a national level. So your community is a bit behind than
I have a
other.
question.
Yes.
What is a household?
What is a
So,
household?
Yeah, one person, two people, three people, four people, what's a household?
Yes, so a household, I believe, is defined as two persons.
No children.
So you are about 20,000 behind in median household income for the average for the rest of the state and for the nation as a whole. In terms of the median home value, you are also lower than the average for the state, which is 180,600, and then on the U.S. level, it's 217,500. However, on the high school graduation or higher, you're right, very, very close to the state average. It's 92% for the state, and you're definitely ahead of the national figure, which is 88%. And then on the poverty scale, you are higher there. For Wisconsin as a whole, it's 10.4%, and for the nation as a whole, it's 11.4%. So you do have some portions of your community who are more challenged socioeconomically to get by. In terms of race and ethnicity, you are more diverse than other parts, than the state as a whole. So 81% of the residents of Wausau identify as white, and that is 87% for the state as a whole. And just you are, for the nation, it's 76%. So you are more diverse than the state as a whole, less diverse than the nation as a whole. I mean, as you can see, that largest piece of the pie showing your race and ethnicity numbers is 11% for Asian, and that reflects the very significant Hmong community that you have in Wausau. It's actually the second largest of any place in the country, the first largest being St. Paul, Minnesota. In terms of demographics, this is how you shake out in terms of age and gender. Just split right down the middle in terms of male and female, your median age, under 40. You are a population that is aging a bit, not at a super fast pace, but when we looked at the data over the past couple of decades, the numbers of people in the 18 to 64 years category increased slightly. And your 65 and over increased slightly as well. We do know that from national statistics that we are becoming an older population across the country. Families are not having as many children, and so that those categories of 65 and older and 18 to 64 are increasing. In terms of your economy, you've got a really good unemployment rate. 2.1% is very low, and I can tell you, you were all the way up to 15.7%, kind of at the peak of the pandemic. So at the end of April of 2020, you were at a high of 15.7%, and that started to come down pretty rapidly. And then you've improved yet since the summer. You were at 4.10% at the end of August, and as of the end of October, you're now at 2.1%. So your unemployment rate is better, and that would suggest to us that there's more people are working, and your economy is more solid in shape than it was during the pandemic. These are the top 10 occupations in Wausau in terms of the employment statistics that come from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So it shows, in numbers where those are, manufacturing and production being, a really significant portion of the jobs, as well as office and administrative support. And then you can see, you get down into the 4,000 and less, and you're in the business and financial, maintenance, education, and healthcare. And here's another look at it. Most common occupations by number of workers: sales and related occupations, office and administrative support occupations, production again, management, and then food preparation. And then if you go down to the industries, again, manufacturing is the most common industry by number of workers, followed by healthcare and then retail trade. In terms of business and economic opportunities regarding survey respondents and how they rate the quality of the business climate in Wausau, in the dark blue there, you have how community members rated Wausau as providing good support for new business owners. You can see here, a lot of people ranked that don't know, and this is a question that oftentimes community members don't know a lot about. Unless you're a business owner or you're really tapped in to, you're really interested in the economy, oftentimes residents aren't really clear about this. In the lime green, infrastructure making, Wausau's infrastructure making it a good place to do business. Again, a pretty significant percentage of, or numbers said I don't know, or neither agree nor disagree. Didn't really know how to weigh in on that. However, in the purple there, a good number of the survey respondents felt strongly that Wausau does support small and local businesses. So that's a good result. And then on the offering good economic opportunity, that one was a little higher than the others in the orange, yellowish orange color there. So now let's talk a little bit about Wausau government, some facts that you maybe didn't know and that will provide a little bit more context. This is an organizational chart of Wausau's government showing you all the different parts of this city and how the ways in which city services are organized and how they're carried out through these different departments. On the right, you can see the 4 core values there. These are important in terms of what is emphasized by city leadership and the elected officials in terms of their expectations for how city employees will carry out services to the public with integrity, professionalism, respect, and accountability. So those are the chosen values and the ways in which city employees are expected to behave. In terms of city revenue, where does the money come from, right, that is used to actually provide services that residents and businesses receive from Wausau city government? This is generally true of many local communities, that the lion's share of the revenue comes from, the largest portion of the revenue comes from general property taxes. You can see in the line green there, there's some other taxes that are levied that represent 11% of the total picture. But the next largest category next to property taxes would be actual charges for public services. Those would be fees that the city charges for different things, such as permitting fees is one example. The 13% for the intergovernmental charges for services, that would be charges to other governments that the city interacts with. And then in the 13% category for other financing sources, that primarily comes from revenues from the city's utility. And you can see there are some other very small categories there. The one in the light blue, the intergovernmental grants and aid, those are federal grants, grants coming from the state of Washington, the state of Wisconsin, and then any other, aid that might be coming from a source that benefits the city budget. Oh, and just so you know, those categories for all local communities have that light blue category has been larger than normal this past couple of years because of the aid that's been coming from the federal government for the COVID-19 response and recovery. So then we have the budget by expenditure, and we like to break this out by activity because it's most meaningful to people. So this is also very common for police and fire to together, the category of public safety together, to be at least half of the budget, sometimes more. So police taking up the lion's share with fire not too far behind it. So when you add those up, those are over half of the expenditures. And then you have public works that takes the next big chunk, and that would be, roads, maintenance of roads, streets, bridges, infrastructure. And then parks is the next, general government is the next. And those are really all the expenditures that are required to keep the lights on, to support the running of the city council and to provide things like information technology and computer systems and those types of things. And then parks is the next there in the green, and then followed by garbage and solid waste recovery. So then we asked survey respondents to tell us what they think the city does well. So where does the city do a good job or perform well? And again, you saw this theme earlier, people really value this, and they also feel that the city does a good job of providing that parks and recreation experience for residents. And then that's followed by people perceive that the public safety aspects of city government are also done well, police and fire. And you've got a pretty big drop off after that, with elections being third most mentioned, and then fourth most was engagement with citizens. And then everything else falls down pretty below that. In terms of our interviews with stakeholders, you can see similar themes here. Public safety, parks and rec came up over and over again. Education in schools came through in our interviews, as well as community events. People really love the events that the city sponsors, and some of our interview folks, the folks we interviewed, told us they'd like to see more of that. Now, roads is interesting because there are our interview folks said that they thought that the city was trying to do a good job, but then we also hear that it's not doing a good enough job. So you'll see that mentioned in both ways. So then we asked, where are the areas where the city needs to improve? There it is, transportation infrastructure. Everybody always wants their roads to be better, and when communities grow, sometimes traffic congestion increases, and people always want to see that addressed, and making sure that things can get, roads can get plowed in the winter, and all those important things. Then the second most, that was ranked second highest, was housing, which probably doesn't surprise you. Then smart and efficient management of public funds, Taxpayers generally are always concerned about whether or not the taxes that they pay are used in the most effective way possible. And then fourth was equity and inclusion. In our interviews, some of the same themes there. One thing that did come up quite strongly in our interviews was people wanting better public transportation, meaning they want the bus service improved. A lot of folks said we need to focus more on economic development, very strategically on economic development. We heard a lot of concerns about divisiveness in the community and sort of the change in the civil discourse, that it isn't as civil as it used to be. Real concerns expressed about homelessness, desire for more opportunities for more diversity of opportunities for entertainment. Some of our folks participating in interviews said they wanted their government leaders to be more visible, and they wanted the city staff to look more like the community in terms of the diversity. And small business support came up over and over as well. So then on the ideas wall on the social engagement platform, this was just a sampling of some of what people posted there in terms of areas of improvement. I know the peach ones are kind of hard to read. I'll read them to you. They all address housing. Address the shortage of housing for low-income residents. Change your definition of affordable housing. Everything that's being built is anything but affordable. Even at a $15 per hour wage, it would take over 2 weeks of pay before taxes to pay rent. Housing is too expensive in Wausau. The type of housing most can afford is substandard. I know of at least 3 people in my social circle who are struggling to afford or find housing in Wausau. The city should reassess what affordable means. Specific to Wausau, you have vast differences in income, which skews the median. An updated survey of wages, unemployment, and homeless in the area could be helpful. Full disclosure, I grew up in Wausau, and my family is centered there. I reside in Madison, but visit Wausau often. And then I think the others are probably clear enough that you can read those. Cleaning up Lake Wausau, quality childcare, and then more safer pedestrian crossings. All right, let's go to the next one. All right, now we're going to look at the stakeholder views on the city's future. So we asked people what were their biggest concerns as residents of Wausau, and taxes ranked at the top, as you can see there, followed by homelessness. Concerns about whether or not the current services and programs that the city offers can be sustained in the future, and then crime. So those are the top ranked concerns. In terms of the challenges people think are going to be facing the community in the next 5 years, cost of living, and the affordability of housing ranked at the top of concerns, or of challenges, I should say, followed by homelessness, and then community divisiveness, and then the economy, and really the ability to recover from the pandemic. Those were by far the top 4, ranked clearly as the most significant challenges. And then our interviews uncovered similar themes, but a few additional ones. Again, that theme about public transit, really wanting the bus service to improve, more focus on diversity inclusion, more focus on job opportunities and economic development, and downtown revitalization, as well as making sure the city's infrastructure is maintained well. And then here's some more comments from the ideas wall on opportunities. Pedestrian bike bridges, let's take advantage of the fact that the housing market is booming. Like more natural areas where around the water treatment plant, opportunities to maybe partner with local nonprofits to create more services for people who are in need. Ecotourism, a great idea around ecotourism, thinking that the city could do something unique with that. And then a desire for a co-op style theater, to crop up in Wausau was something that was presented. So some things people would like to see more of in Wausau: more small businesses driving the local economy, having the access to more passive. The blue there is passive public preserves and trails. So more of the open space type of places to recreate. And then in the red there, followed by, not too far behind, by recreational active places, active parks, fields, courts, gymnasiums. And then fourth was cultural amenities, so more theaters and galleries and those types of things. And then in the yellow there, the civic gathering areas where you can go for picnics and amphitheaters where concerts can be held and those types of things. Businesses, I don't want to focus on chain restaurants. I want to focus on locally owned shops and restaurants. People like those because they kind of hold to the unique character of the community. And people really like, I think someone said it at the very beginning in the words that you use to describe Wausau: a small town community, but with big city amenities. And locally owned shops and restaurants that fit with what the lifestyle is in Wausau is what people like. And then again, that theme about locally owned businesses, they really want to see that. And we heard that a lot in terms of trying to get younger people to stay in the community and not leave and go somewhere else, for them to be able to stay and open their own business here, so that you don't lose the youthful aspect of your population. In terms of the interviews and some additional comments that we saw on the Social Pinpoint site, multimodal transportation, so opportunities for people to get around other than cars only, right? So expanding that and having different modes. More intergovernmental cooperation to solve some of the harder to solve problems, like homelessness, like poverty in the area. That housing theme again, the economy theme again, and three that I'd like to point out that came strongly from the Hmong community were the three at the bottom there. They really talked a lot about more opportunities in the community for families to do things together, stronger schools. The members of the Hmong community felt like the school quality had suffered over the last several years, and then more of a focus on equity and inclusion, so everybody in the community feels welcome. And then this question was really trying to zone in on what do people think Wausau should put at the top of the priorities in its very first strategic plan. And you can see good jobs there at the top. Right behind that is the business environment for local businesses. So good jobs in the economy is what people really want to see as an emphasis in this strategic plan, as well as sustainable development. And then the affordable housing was not very far behind that, and then transportation. So those were the top five. Survey respondents ranking their level of confidence that Wausau will be a better place 5 years from now. So we ask this in every community strategic planning process that we do. We like to gauge the sense of optimism that community members have for the future. You can see here that it was kind of split in half, or split equally, in terms of those who were very confident and confident versus not at all confident and not very confident. Big chunk there were somewhat confident, so a little bit on the fence, not really totally in one camp or the other. So when we were asking this in the interviews, we heard a lot of people say, I would have rated it higher. However, I'm taking a lot of my view from what's happening on a state level and what's happening also on a national level. And so it kind of dampened people's concerns about what's happening nationally and what's happening at the state level, dampened the number that they would have given it. And we're hearing that in communities all across the country. So I'm going to stop there and ask those of you, community members who are here this evening, if there's something in that presentation that stood out, did you learn something new? Do you have questions about what was presented? When you look at that information, what does that say to you about the future of the community, and maybe what some of the things are that are going to need attention and focus?
Hi. I'm sorry, I forgot your name. What was? Michelle. Hi.
Michelle.
Hi, Michelle. My name is John. So there was one thing that really stuck out to me that I really wanted to ask a question about,
Yeah.
and that was the affordable housing issue. So it seems we have a very low unemployment rate and a very low median household average. So I'm just curious, how is that affecting on the affordable housing issue when everything seems to be in order?
Yeah, well, so part of what's happening nationwide on the affordable housing issue is there's a couple of things going on. There's wages and earnings not keeping pace with the value, the market value of homes. And in some communities, it's also inventory. So the availability of actual property to buy is much lower than what is needed, and so that drives the price up of homes, because then they're in demand, right? Because there isn't enough inventory to meet the needs. Some communities aren't able to build housing fast enough. The unemployment rate number, it looks good on its face, but it might not be as true as that number. That number might be masking people who have dropped out of the workforce, and we are hearing a lot of national stories and attention around that from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, from the Bureau of Labor, saying, you know, our confidence level in these numbers, in terms of a true reflection of, you know, only 2.1% of the population is unemployed. We have a much lower confidence in those figures than we used to because of the changes that have happened as a result of the pandemic. We know that people are dropping out of the workforce entirely. So I don't know that I have the full answer to your question, but those are some of the things that I think are driving that that whole question and discussion and concern around affordable housing.
Thank you. I just have one more question before I hand off
Yes.
the mic. Well, it's not really a question, but a comment. So one of the things that I didn't really see until the very end of your slideshow was the focus on sustainability. So as a person in Wausau with a green collar job, a lot of my work is done out of state because the local environment and the state environment for those type of work is not available. So I'm not sure what we can do about that, but that's just something I wanted to point out.
And
then-
John, I will tell you that we did hear more about sustainability and climate and those types of things in the interviews. Our interviews are more qualitative data, right? But a lot of people that we interviewed brought that up. So I think it's probably a more prominent than maybe this presentation shows. And in retrospect, I think we probably should have included a more specific question about sustainability and climate and those types of things in the survey. When you use the word sustainability, not everybody has a clear understanding in their mind of what that definition is. And so I think we need to do a little bit better job of trying to tease that out in our survey. Thanks for the question.
Yeah, thank you. And then just one final thing. Is this a presentation, is this available for the public?
Yeah, I think we should go ahead and, post this either on the social pinpoint page. That's probably the best place for it. We can, or if, we can talk to the city about where they want to put it on their website. But yes, we will make it available.
Yeah, it's actually being recorded, so it'll be on our YouTube channel with all our city meetings.
Oh, great. That's awesome. Okay. Anyone else like to comment on the presentation?
I have a question about the affordable housing thing too. My name's Tyler.
Hi, Tyler.
Hi. Do they ever look at like what a mode income is versus a median? I mean, do you understand what I'm asking? Like,
I do.
if the average home is 120 grand and the average person's making 42 grand around here, that's already affordable, you know, by definition, if we're trying to hit a 30% cost ratio of our salary. I mean, could
Right.
it be that in this area there's a large number of people making far below that and a fewer number making a lot more?
Correct.
I mean, I've never seen numbers put that way, but
And
the way this is
I-
presented, it doesn't suggest there's a problem. You know what I'm saying?
I do know what you're saying, and I think, one of the pieces that might end up coming out of the strategic planning process is a deeper study into the housing issue. One thing that happens when local communities update their comprehensive plans or, do a big overhaul, particularly to the housing component of their comp plan, they will do a deep study where they'll actually commission the study and contract it out and have a vendor, a consultant that really, knows how to do that work, look deeply into that to answer the question. And it may very well be that the city decides that it needs to commission such a study to really get at this question, because unless you start looking at the numbers in that way, it's really hard to tease out what to do about it.
Thank you.
And another study or survey that's often done it's called the National Community Survey, and it's a national firm that you can contract with at the city level to have a study commissioned, and they go deep into the demographics in order to be able and disaggregate the data in order to be able to pull more information on that topic of housing affordability. So that's another avenue that the city could take.
Ready? Affordable housing is, I guess, my question as well, same theme. One of the criticisms of late has been building of what some have classified as high-end apartments. But in your discussion, you talk about total inventory. Is there data to suggest that adding high-end apartments adds inventory and then helps the affordable parcels out there?
That's a very good question. I don't know if the city has data or not that would help us answer that. That's something I'm going to ask about. I haven't seen anything yet, but I'll dig into that a little bit more deeply. I think, some of the higher end housing has to do too with the downtown revitalization focus. I think what we really need to understand, so affordable housing is an interesting term because affordable housing for me as a single person, one person household with the particular income that I have is one thing in comparison to a 4-person household with one parent working, the other parent not working, and 2 kids. And depending on what that one working parent is making. It's sort of like affordable housing for people at different places and in different situations within the housing market. If you're a young couple, you might be making fairly good money, but getting that first house, is that first house out of reach? And so I think that the picture that we have right now that we're presenting is too simplistic. We've got to dig further in to really understand what the housing need is in Wausau.
Thank you for that. I'm the next guy, Pat, and
Hi, Pat.
hello. Anyway, not that it's a bad thing, but it seems to me from the survey results you showed, there is a higher degree of responses that express concern for support for small business, that kind of stuff like that, in a kind of more support there than you would expect from the general population. I'm wondering if you have a sense if the survey respondents, if there was a kind of an outsized influence from the business community in your responses.
Yeah, we didn't collect the demographic data on that, and the reason why we typically don't do that is for purposes of strategic planning, we're not really looking at the quantitative need here. We're trying to, what we try to do is we try to get good information from every facet of the community, and that's why we do qualitative analysis along with the actual quantitative analysis. I don't know if we got more of a predominant response from the business community or not. What we look for is how do the themes show up in interviews versus whether they're group interviews or one-on-one interviews versus an actual survey tool. And we saw the themes were pretty close in alignment. So we heard a lot of the concerns about local, environment for local business and support for local business in our stakeholder interviews as well. And those were not predominantly from the business community. The business community is really one of many stakeholder groups that we're doing interviews with. So I can't tell you for sure, but based on the interview data, that survey data does not look out of alignment to me. It does not look skewed.
Okay, then and when you're showing the bar graphs with where people think what their concerns are with the community or what they think the community should do more of and that kind of stuff, were there, how did those categories or subject areas develop? Were there rankings in the survey?
Yes.
Where it
So
wasn't
we
just
had,
fill in the blank and taxes came to the top?
we actually had that pre-populated with about 10 to 12 different options. When we're doing a community-wide survey, we never know if we're going to get 100 responses or 5,000. And so we really have to be careful about the number of sort of like open-ended questions that we ask. And so what we typically do is work to customize each community survey, but using categories that are pretty typical and that are part of those larger sort of nationwide surveys that I spoke of, and kind of trying to keep like categories that survey respondents would recognize. And then what we do is we ask them to rank. So we might give them 12 different options and we ask them to rank them 1 to 12. And then in other cases, we ask them to rate from poor to excellent, or we rate their level of agreement using a Likert scale, like strongly agree, neither agree nor disagree, and strongly disagree or don't know. So those are the 3 different scales we typically use.
Okay, and then, so if those are somewhat standard, I don't know if you actually said that, but is there a way for us to compare our community and how concerned our community is about topic X compared to other communities around the country?
Yeah, we can, and we will actually do that as part of our preparation for the plan development work that will be kicking off in January. We'll be bringing our data and our perspectives in from other communities that we're working with. Now, I think that's useful and I think it's relevant, but we also have to be really careful to not overemphasize that because every community is unique. And some communities are going to have a much better response rate to their survey than you do, or your response rate might be better than that of another community. So I think it's helpful and it's useful and it's good to put into the mix, but we want to be careful not to give it more emphasis than it deserves. I think that what we as strategic planning consultants, what we like to try to do is we like to try to say, look, this is one data point or one source of data. And what we try to do is synthesize information from a variety of different sources and look for thematic things. Because when we're developing a strategic plan, we're looking at the strategy level. We're not getting into this is the particular action we're going to take, or this is the specific initiative that we're going to do. We're more focused on what are the main priorities, what are the biggest needs in the community, and what are the strategic objectives that we're going to pursue in order to make progress on those things. So we're not trying to get down to, where's the pothole on this street? we're trying to look at it from a strategic perspective. So we do the integration and the synthesis of data a little bit differently than you might do, for example, for the development of a comprehensive plan.
So this is Tony. The difference between a comprehensive plan and a strategic plan would be what?
Comprehensive plan is really planning out the development of your community. So you're looking at parcels of land, you're looking at the zoning, you're looking at where you have buildable land for businesses, for example. You look at all of that in the context of likely projected growth in your community by different types of population. It drills down to the neighborhood level even, of what are the conditions that exist in that neighborhood, and what are the opportunities for making that neighborhood a better place, either economically or through the placement of new parks and recreation facilities. So it has several different elements to it, land use being one of them, the economy being one of them, and it's done in such a way that it's called a comprehensive plan because you try to integrate them. And for communities that have like a lot of agricultural land around them, there might be an agriculture component to it. So every city's comprehensive plan is a little bit different, but they generally have some similar categories to them.
And then how does that differ from a strategic plan?
So a strategic plan is a shorter term focus to look at, okay, so if you have, for a city that has a comprehensive plan, you might look like this is 20 years where we think we might be headed from a community planning standpoint. What does that mean for our shorter term strategies over the next 5 years? But the strategic plan also attempts to look at community needs, community desires, what residents want, what residents are seeing as opportunities for the betterment of their lives. And again, the time frame is shorter. Typically, it's a 5-year vision with 5-year goals and objectives, and then some shorter term actions. But
So for example, let's take affordable housing. We'll come up with a definition of what affordable housing is in the city of Wausau. And I'm not entirely 100% positive, but I would guess that Wausau is about 95 to 96% already built out. And many of the houses are from the 1900s, early 1900s. I live in one that was built in 1926. And most of these houses, until recently, were valued at $100,000 or less. And they couldn't be rebuilt today for less than $200,000. So the whole idea of affordable housing has made a tremendously more expensive option if you're going to do it with the same paradigm of every family having their own home. So there's an aspect, to my point of view, in strategic planning where it involves cultural change. You can't build affordable housing in Wausau. It's not possible. Therefore,
Yeah.
all of the high-end not unless it's subsidized, let's put it that way. The private sector cannot build affordable housing. So that seems to me, I've been attending meetings on a regular basis, one of the critical issues in this town. We provide a lot of low-wage labor, $10 an hour, $12 an hour or less, even $15 an hour, as one of the participants pointed out, is not much money. That's $30,000 a year. So unless we take care of the housing issue and health care and child care, those seem to be the three things. So my question would be, if, when we're finished with this strategic plan, are we going to have some way, first of all, to measure what we have now, and then what sort of benchmarks are we going to have in 2022, 23, 24, 25, 26, if you say we're looking at a 5-year plan? Can we expect that kind of a product with your help?
So I don't know what is going to come out of the strategic discussion yet. We're not there. I know that the alderpersons have communicated to me in their interviews that housing is at the top of their priorities, right? So what I'm hoping the strategic plan will do is be able to articulate the strategies that are needed. One of those strategies that might be needed in the short term is a much more comprehensive study. I don't know that yet, but what I do advise, if we can get there, and it depends on how far along your community is in terms of working on this issue. Some communities are really far along. We like to put performance metrics in regarding each strategic priority. So if housing is a strategic priority, we would want to be able to set targets that are based in some reality, right? And then measure towards those targets. And that's a best practice in a strategic plan. But I have some more questions that I need to ask, our team needs to ask around the housing issue. So I can't really give you a full answer to that, but I know what would be desired, and that is that we would have clearly articulated strategies around housing articulated in the strategic plan, as well as some type of performance measures to be able to measure progress. That's the ideal. All right, I'd like to move us to the big focused question for this evening, to get your input on the desired future that you have for Wausau. When you look out 5 to 10 years, that one of the ways I like to ask residents to think of this question is to say, if you would still want to be living in Wausau, right, in 5 years, what would the community need to look like? What would need to be here in order for you to still want to remain a resident of Wausau and be happy and enjoying life in Wausau? And so you can look at it from, what are the things that you would like to see the same or maintain? And then what are things that you would maybe like to see that are different?
That's a relatively easy question for me to answer. I think the city of Wausau and the surrounding area is a very unique part of this country. We have tremendous healthcare facilities here. We have strong education. We have a lot of money in this community, and I'm not referring just to Wausau. It could be a real example for the rest of the country. I don't think it's going to happen because it means cooperation among the power brokers. In my recent return to the city, I grew up here, spent the first 20 years of my life here, and have lived out of the community for most of the time since then and returned recently. It hasn't changed much except in buildings, but it is a much prettier town than it used to be because of the buildings. I think we have some real issues in the immediate future with a mall that we tore down and that we need to rebuild very sensibly, I hope. Some foolish things going on there too. But it presents some unique opportunities. There's no reason why we couldn't have a community-wide healthcare system, for example. We don't have a healthcare system in this community. We don't have a healthcare system in this country. We have a sick care system, and it's horrible. And those people are doing fine, while the people that are making $10, $15 an hour can't afford healthcare, they can't afford childcare. So I'd like to see a community where there was an actual vision where people were taken care of by the community in a much more sensible, objective sort of way than we do now. Instead of it being haphazard and the well-off doing fine because their system works well for them, that the community as a whole sets up a comprehensive plan, a strategic plan that includes everybody. And I would think that would mean we'd have to take the city of Wausau and really piece by piece rebuild it, not just for the high-end market rate apartments, but for other people who live in the community so they could afford to live and work here and be secure in the knowledge that their children are going to be well educated and well cared for.
Thank you. Who else would like to comment?
Here we go.
John or Tyler?
Hi, Michelle. This is John again. So as an older millennial, one of the things that my generation is very prominent about, which I have already discussed, was the sustainability factor. So for the city of Wausau, I would like to see it as a hub for all these initiatives and motives and whatnot. So it can be a state leader, a national leader, a regional leader. That's up for debate. But something that will attract the younger generations, and because of that, it will make them want to invest in a smaller city, and which will also help them enjoy the amenities of the outdoors that everybody loves.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
This is Tyler again. I was talking to my friend the other day, who's in the room here, and I was thinking that something that would be cool to be known for in this small town is to be the easiest town to start a small business in. Because with that would come all the other things that we're looking for. There'd be better jobs, more community involvement, more tax opportunities for the city to grow and pay for everything. I'm not really familiar with other cities that take that approach. The last 10 or 15 years that I've been involved in city things here, it's always been a way to attract millennials or young professionals, but I don't understand why we have to limit it to just that group. Why don't we just find entrepreneurs and people that want to, water the grass beneath their feet and build something from the ground up?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, it seems like there's so many attractive things about the community that would make it a wonderful place for startups and for real entrepreneurial, spirited and minded people.
Anybody else on this question? Looks like it for this one.
All right. So with that, I want to ask my last question. And it'd be great if you all would share your number and your reason for it. Scale of 1 to 5. 1 is least confident, 5 is most confident. And how confident are you that Wausau will be a better place 5 years from now? So if you each wouldn't mind sharing your where you would be on that scale and why.
Let's see, we're saying 5 is high, right? So
Yeah, 5 is high confidence.
So, I mean, I'd say I'd give it a 4. I just think that we have a lot of room for growth at this point, especially economic development and so forth with the changes downtown. So for that reason, I see more potential for improvement than a reverse.
Thank you.
I would definitely give it a 5. You said that the national house is 270 grand right now? Is that correct?
200, but actually, I think it's 200, I can go back and look, 217,500.
Excuse me.
Is the median home value. for Expedition.
217. So to be able to afford a house here on average is 40% less than that, 30% less than that. Mm-hmm. I think if we start giving businesses opportunities to build around here, I mean, we have a housing stock problem. I just looked for 3 years to find a house around here. But I think that being so low and the affordability of living around here is a real attractive feature, along with all the outdoor amenities and the proximity to multiple large cities that are only 2 or 3 hours away. You can get whatever you want within a couple of hours of here, and you can live a very affordable life in Wausau, in my opinion.
Mine is commenting a little bit on what Tyler said, kind of on some of that. It was on the affordable housing part that we were talking about before. It's not really directly in regard to this question. But the one thing is, we don't have a lack of affordable housing. I haven't looked for housing actively on a low end or anything like that in a number of years because I'm getting older now. But my kids have in neighboring communities. And when they looked in communities such as Stevens Point or something like that, other areas around here, Wausau does not have a problem with affordable housing. We may have a problem with low-income housing, but that's totally different than affordable housing. And that affordable housing, of course, relates back to those wages we talked about and everything like that.
Anyone, anything else to share on this question?
Yep, here we go.
I would give it a 4. I think one of the things that needs to happen is that local government needs to learn to play well with the business community and make sure that the business community understands that local government is behind them and wants to see them thrive. And of course, that helps local government. So
Yep.
I think that's something we need to work on a little bit. But maybe I revise that to 4.5 instead of a 4.
Okay,
So things are going
thank
well.
you. Thank you. All right, well, that
Yeah.
wraps up the,
I'll throw in one final here if I could.
oh, okay,
I
John.
echo what Pat says. One of the things we've tried to do is clean up the interior of our city to attract businesses to other locations. So we've moved some of our historical industry out to our industrial park. But centrally located where we are in Wisconsin, we should be a natural draw for a lot of industry and our distribution capabilities throughout the state of Wisconsin. I think we're centrally located to attract more industrial or manufacturing jobs. And I think that's
Yep.
what we need to go with.
Yep,
Got another one?
I would give it a 3 because there's a pessimistic side to myself that things aren't going to change much. Since I've been back here for the last 3 years, the majority of city funds have gone to the people that who already have the money. And call it affordable or low-income housing has not really been addressed. There is a project on the boards now, I guess, that's going to do that, and I'm not sure how that works yet. So this strategic planning session really comes at a good time. We've torn down some of the newer buildings in town, and it looks like an atomic bomb hit it right now. Luckily, you didn't tear down the garages, the parking lot garages. However, they were built in the most strategic part of that piece of property. Downtown Wausau presents a real problem because a lot of the parcels can't be remodeled or built on, but it could be changed. But it would take a pretty big effort on the part of everyone. I don't think it's impossible, but the next couple of years are going to really set the tone for what this city in this area becomes in the next 9 years, let's say 2030. One of the biggest problems we have is politics, obviously. We have 62 municipalities in this county. I feel like I'm living in the Middle Ages. We have Weston, Rothschild, Schofield, and as far as I'm concerned, they're all part of Wausau. But everybody has their own fire department, their own police department. We duplicate a lot of services in this area. We spend about $2 million a month on police and fire protection, and some of that money could maybe be put into low-income housing. But we will probably not look at those issues because we are focused so much on today and yesterday, so maybe we do have a chance. But I'm a little bit pessimistic.
thank you for sharing that.
Okay,
Is
we're
that-
good.
Is that everybody? Okay. Amir, Katie?
Yeah. Hey. So I just want to, thank you very much for participating in this, using an hour and a half of your, what day is it? Thursday night. So thank you. Some of what I've heard over the last 3 days of this has been really enlightening, and already I'm coming up with ideas, but we'll be speeding through this strategic planning process. I can't remember exactly when we're planning on getting it done, but in the next few months. But in the meantime, if you're interested in sounding off still, we have this social pinpoint site that I think Michelle has showed you. So you can sound off on the ideas wall. We've got a survey. And if you don't like that, you can always call, snail mail, email, all of it. We want to hear about everything that you're interested in when it comes to strategic planning. So stay engaged. And thank you. Just thank you for participating. I know that this isn't everybody's idea of an awesome night, so appreciate you participating.
Thank you so much. Very helpful.